Today's daf we're going to learn is Ketubot daf Pevav. You might have seen it on our Facebook or Instagram. I don't know if you've seen it yet this morning, but today's daf is the 1000th daf of Shas. Very exciting. Big accomplishment for everybody here, even if you haven't done all 1,000. Today's daf is sponsored by the Hadran Hebrew Zoom learners in honor of the 1000th daf of this cycle, in honor of Rabbanit, who paves the way for us by making the Talmud and its concepts accessible, by learning with us day in, day out, with a woman's perspective, unfazed by difficulties along the way, and always with a smile. Okay, with that, let's get started with our daf. We're going to get started right now with and obviously all our learners get a lot of credit for these 1,000 dafim that we've learned together. Okay, let's get started with, today is one of these, a bit of a disjointed daf. We're going to have a lot of different sections and different parts to it. I just want to start with this interesting story of the relatives of Rav Nachman. This story is incredibly parallel to a story, not the content, but the structure of it, to a story we saw with Rabbi Yochanan and his relatives, if you might remember. And we're going to see, we'll go through the story and then I'm sure you'll remember the details. Again, not the details necessarily of the story of what exactly he advised, but it was a story where he advised his relatives and then felt bad about it. Okay, so here goes. Krivte de Rav Nachman, zabin teliketubata betovat hana'ah. So a relative of Rav Nachman, maybe we should review quickly where we started. We were in the middle of this very complicated topic. In fact, Gefet is on it this week, which I was happy to see. It's a very difficult topic to write. Gefet, they go much more in depth, which is good. We don't have the time to always do that. There's this topic that we ended with of somebody sells a promissory note. So I'm owed money by someone, and I sell you the rights to collect that loan. Right? Let's say it's not due yet, and I want the money now. I'm strapped for cash. So I sell it to you. You give me money right now. You're going to pay me less than the value of the loan because otherwise, what's the point, right? You're going to basically, let's say it was $1,000. You're going to pay me, let's say, $750. You're going to give me $750 for that $1,000 loan. So I get the $750 now. I'm happy. You later will collect $1,000 on it, so you'll gain something. Otherwise, there's no point for you to buy it. And great, everything sounds perfect. What's the problem? The problem is that according to the Gemara here, according to Shmuel says that I have the right to basically cancel the loan. If the borrower comes to me and says, listen, can you just, you lent me this money, can you just let it go? And I say, yeah, sure, no problem. Now, for me, it's no skin off my back. I sold the promissory note. For you, it's a huge loss. Okay, so we talked about yesterday that you can eventually come back to me and claim the money. We're going to learn today that not everybody even thinks that, okay, which makes it even more crazy. So Rabbi Eliezer talks about in Gefet that some people think that selling a promissory note is not actually something you could really sell by Torah law, and maybe that's why. It's not even a valid transaction, okay? And therefore, you've done it, it has validity, but it's not really, you can't really sell. A shtar isn't really, it's just a piece of paper. You can't really sell it by Torah law, which would then maybe explain a little bit better how this could happen. In any case, the point is that if you have a loan outstanding and you sell your promissory note to someone else and someone owes you money, you can cancel that loan and that person will be left with nothing. Now you have to remember, when you bought this promissory note, there's a bit of risk attached because you never really know if you're going to get money back from someone. Right? There's always a bit of a risk. So in this case, right, you got really messed up. So Rav Nachman has this female relative who basically sold the rights to her ketuba, which is very similar. It's like a promissory note, right? We've been comparing this whole Mishna, the people who are owed money from the husband, the creditors, right? And the woman, she's owed her ketuba. Her ketuba is worth money. Now here, it's an even riskier transaction because the husband might die after the wife, which would mean that he already inherits the ketuba, and then you bought her ketuba and you basically don't get anything because you're only going to get her ketuba money if it happens that the woman gets her ketuba money. She gets her ketuba money if she dies second, meaning he dies first, or he divorces her. So you bought it betovat hana'ah, meaning he bought it for not a lot of money from this relative of Rav Nachman. What happened? Igarsha. Well, in fact, the husband divorced her, so she was supposed to get her ketuba money, which means the person who bought it was supposed to get the ketuba money. Ushchiva. Now, in the meantime, she dies. So who's in charge of this now? Who comes in her place? Well, she doesn't have any sons, so she has a daughter. Atu katavele labart. So they went to get the money from the daughter. The person who bought the ketuba from the mother goes to the daughter and says, listen, go get your ketuba money and give it to me. Well, Amar Lahu Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says in this very kind of, you'll see, I can't think of the word how to describe it, but you'll see in a minute, Leika delis balait says, there's no one who can give my relative some advice. He's basically talking in a way that he wants her to hear, but without actually saying it directly to her. So he says, is there no one who can give her some good halachic advice? Okay, how so? What should she do? Tezo b'tichla l'ktubata. She should go and forgo the ketuba money. Go to her father, who's supposed to pay her the ketuba money in place of her mother. Go to the father and say, right? Tichle l'ktuba di'ima l'gabe avua. Go to the father and say, you know what? I'm not going to bother collecting the ketuba money. You can keep it. Viter tamine. And then what will happen? When he dies, right? The assumption is probably he'll die before her. When he dies, she'll inherit it. Okay? So she has nothing to lose in doing this. Because in any case, she's not going to get the ketuba money. So why doesn't she just forego the ketuba? The husband will then come in, the father will keep the ketuba money. Eventually he'll die, she'll inherit it. Right? And in the worst case, she dies first. Okay, well, she hasn't lost anything. So Shama Azla Achilta. So she hears this. Okay, obviously he meant for her to hear it when he said it. And right, either some people who were with him heard and told her, or she overheard him saying this. So she went and she was mochel, and mochelet, she forgoed on the ketuba. Amar Rav Nachman. Now, what happened was, so basically, this person who bought the ketuba b'tovat hana'ah and ended up with nothing. And she, and her father, ended up with the money in his hands, and eventually, hopefully, it'll go to her. So Rav Nachman gave her this good advice, but Amar Rav Nachman afterwards, Rav Nachman regretted. Okay, we're in the time of Yom Kippur, leading up to Yom Kippur, and regrets and thinking back and saying, maybe we shouldn't have done that. So he comes and says, Asinu atzmeinu k'orchei hadayanim. You'll probably remember this because right, Rabbi Yochanan said the same thing after he advised his relatives. He then felt guilty and said, well, I've become like a lawyer and advising my relatives to do things using these halachic loopholes, to do things that basically are cheating other people out of their money. So the Gemara asks exactly what they asked Rabbi Yochanan at the time, which was Mi'ikara ma'asav u'levasav ma'asav. What was he thinking originally that he did this? And then what did he think in the end? What made him shift? Mi'ikara savar u'mibsarcha lo titaleh. In the beginning, he thought, quoting this pasuk in Yeshayahu, right, Yeshayahu, which says, you shouldn't ignore your relatives. In other words, he knew this halachic solution, and he felt it was his imperative to tell his relatives because we're supposed to take care of our relatives. But in the end, he realized that he's a prominent person. And in the position of a prominent person to teach. Now, here's a good question. What's wrong with this as a prominent person? Either forgetting that it was his relative, maybe just teaching halachic loopholes to cheat other people out of money is not a good thing for a prominent person to be doing. Or helping your relatives to cheat other people is also not an appropriate thing for a prominent person to be doing, right? Either which way, whether it means this or it means that, both are really not appropriate. And basically he said, I'm in a certain position where I am, I shouldn't really be doing things like this. So he regretted what he did. The question is, it seems like it was too late, and that's what's interesting as you think about Yamim Noraim and the, Yom Kippur coming up. There's certain things we regret that we can undo, and there's certain things that we can't really undo. In this case, I assume it was really too late. Once she did it, it was done. There was not much that could be done. Gufa. Now we're going to have advice about what Shmuel said. If you're going to buy a promissory note, how can you protect yourself from somebody using this halachic loophole against you? So gufa. Gufa means we're going to go a little bit more in depth into something we said before. So we're going to again quote Shmuel, Amar Shmuel. This is just a quote from what we saw at the end of yesterday's stuff. Somebody sells a promissory note to his friend, and he then goes and forgoes on the loan. Machul. It's effective. Afilu yoresh mochel. Even someone who inherits, right? The meaning, I sold you the promissory note, and my heirs come in, I'm no longer alive, my heirs come in, they can even forego the loan. So that's just a quote from what we saw yesterday. Here comes the new addition. If he's smart, this is the way the rabbis give advice to people. They say, if you're going to be smart about it, here's what you should do. Right? We've seen this a whole bunch of times. He should shake some money in front of his face, right? This is, when you want to get something done, you kind of pull out a little bit of cash and give them a little extra money. So if I sell you this promissory note, you basically should go, if you're smart, go to the borrower and pay him a little bit of money to write a shtar, to agree basically to write the document with your name on it. Once your name is on it, then if I forego the loan, it doesn't really have anything to do with you anymore. Okay? So it doesn't have anything to do with me anymore. It's now between the two of you. It's a question among the commentaries, exactly how we can rewrite this loan, because if we rewrite it as a new document, then it weakens your position, because you want to be able to claim it from property that was in that was in the borrower's possession from the date that I had the loan with him, right? So you don't want to write a whole new document, but what you want to do is kind of add your name in somehow, okay? Not write a whole new document as if you loaned him the money. That wouldn't be very smart because you'd lose out. But you could somehow, okay, and that's exactly like a bit of a discussion, what exactly you do, but somehow add your name in so that your name is there. And then if I forego the loan, nothing really will, that won't change anything. Another thing, which is the real issue, which is, we talked about yesterday, do I have to compensate you now? Do I have to pay you the amount? Okay, this is a good question. Now, let's say it was a loan for $1,000. This actually isn't discussed in the Gemara explicitly, but I'll raise this as a question. I loaned you $1,000. I sold it to you for $1,000. Sorry. It was a loan for $1,000. I sold it to you for $750, let's say. Because again, if I want the money now, and right, there's no reason you would buy a promissory note for $1,000 for $1,000. It wouldn't make any sense. You wouldn't gain anything, and you'd just be out of money right now. So obviously I sold it to you for less. So now I've caused you damage. Now, what damage have I caused you? Have I caused you $750 worth of damage or $1,000 worth of damage? It's a good question. But the Gemara is discussing in general the damage that I caused you. Right now, you can't collect your $1,000, okay? So probably I'd have to pay you $1,000, even though I only, right, it's a good question. You know, I only got $750. But the Gemara doesn't deal with that at all. But Amar Meimar, and he says the following. Man didain dina degarme. Okay, dina degarme is something that comes up in Nezikin, which is damages that are caused indirectly. Basically, I caused you damages indirectly. Okay, how you define indirect is a good question. Because if it's indirect and it's definite, I don't know how indirect this is, because this clearly caused you a loss. But we're going to view this as indirect damages because I did one action, canceling the loan, and it caused you damage of not being able to collect. So it's indirect. So now Amemar says the world splits into two. There's people or judges and courts where they collect indirect damages, and there's courts that don't believe in that. It's machloket Rabbi Meir and the rabbis in I think it's in Baba Kama. Yeah, in Baba Kama. Rabbi Meir holds dina degarme and the rabbis don't. So we have this split. So basically he says, man didain dina degarme, if it's a court that does hold by indirect damages, magbe beid me shari ma'alia, they collect the full value of the document, which sounds like the $1,000 actually. Sounds like he would collect the full damage that was now caused him. Man de lo dain dina degarme, but anyone who doesn't hold that, if they don't, magbe beid me niyara ba'alma. It's a bit of a debate what this means, but basically what it means is you get either almost nothing or nothing, because all you have is a piece of paper in your hand. The piece of paper is worth nothing. So you can't claim anything. It's only indirect damages. All you have is the paper in your hand, which is worth the value of a piece of paper, and that's about it. And therefore, right, you basically end up with nothing. So we end up with this split that you could theoretically try to claim damages, but only if you go to a court where they are willing to charge someone for indirect damages. Some courts won't charge anyone, and then you're really stuck. So Hava Uvda, they're not going to end with just that though. There was a case, Vikafia Rafram le Rav Ashi. He forced Rafram, who's Rafram Bar Papa, we know him from the Siyum, right? He's one of the sons of Rav Papa. He forced Rav Ashi to charge damages in this case. It sounds like Rav Ashi didn't really want to, and he forced him to. But and Rav Ashi collected the damages for this person. It wasn't him. He was the judge. He made the person who forwent on the loan, he made him pay, there's an interesting phrase, like the beam of a sculptor, okay, which is very precise. And he made him pay the precise amount of what he had caused, the damages. Okay, there's another interpretation of Kafir Rav from Rav Ashi and Rav Chama, and I'm going to leave that as an open question that you can listen to Gefet and see what it has to do there. And Rabbi Shimoni connected specifically that issue to tshuva for children. What if you do something as a child? Do you need to repent for it later when you get older? It's a very interesting topic. So that's part of what Gefet is all about this week. Amar Amemar, I think it's not up on the site yet. We only got it last night. Hopefully it'll go up today. It's a Friday, so no promises, but if not, it'll be up the beginning of next week. Amar Amemar Mishmei Rav Chama. Hi, and by the way, it's up in Hebrew already. Amar Amemar Mishmei Rav Chama. Hi, okay. Like I said, today we're going to move topics. So our first topic was this topic of someone who had a loan and basically canceled the loan, had sold the promissory note, etc. Now we're going to go on to a different thing, which is, if you remember, the topic of our Mishna was a person dies and has creditors and a woman who wants to get her ketuba money and the orphans. And the question is, who gets first dibs, right? We have Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tarfon. Is it Lakoshel Shebenehem? Is it the orphans? Okay, so now we get to a topic where the person is actually still alive. Amar Amemar Mishmei Rav Chama. So Amemar says in the name of Rav Chama, Hi man di'ika alei ketubat isha bal chov. Someone's supposed to pay his wife's ketuba. Let's say he divorced her, and he has a bal chov. Okay, he has someone, a creditor. V'ilei ara, v'ilei zuze, and he has land and he has money. Lebal chov misakina lebezuzim. So if it's the bal chov, the creditor, so the creditor lent him money, he gets back the money. L'isha misakina laba'ara. The woman, they pay with land. Because we always said the land is used to collect the ketuba money. Hai kidine v'hai kidine, each one according to what is appropriate for them. V'ilo ika elachad ara v'lo chazi ela lachad. But what if there's only one piece of land and it's only enough for one of them to collect? So who gets it? Now, if you remember, and this is going to be a little bit complicated, if you remember, we talked about before, once he's dead and one of them grabs it, right? Who gets it? It was a whole question. Rabbi Tarfon said, whoever grabs it can get it. Okay. And then Rabbi Akiva said, what are you talking about? It goes to the orphans. But then Rabbi Tarfon also had this din about the koshel shebenehem. And we had a question, who's the koshel? Who's the weaker? So one opinion was it's the weaker proof. The one who has the weaker proof, meaning the one whose document is dated the later date. But Rabbi Yochanan had said, it's the woman. Why the woman? We're going to go more toward the side of the woman because of china. What was china? To ensure that she get married. Right, we'll go with Rashi for right now, even though Tosfot has a bit of a different approach, but it's still the same idea, which is in order to encourage her to get married, Rashi says, we're going to make it easy to collect her ketuba so that she'll be encouraged to get married. She'll know that she has easy access to her money. This sugya is going to say the exact opposite. Okay, who really has first rights to it? The creditor gets it, not the woman. My timer. More than a man wants to get married, a woman wants to be married. Okay, meaning women always, this goes more with tov l'meitav tandum and l'meitav ormalu, which is women would always rather be married than sit together with two rather than by herself. And therefore, we don't need to encourage her by making it easier for her to collect her ketuba. So in the event that there's only one piece of land, the Baal Chov gets it and not the woman. And why is that? They're missing the real important part, which is the main reason. A Baal Chov is normally someone who loaned money. Now, if we don't let the Baal Chov get his money back easily, if it's going to be him or the wife, he's not going to lend money. It's not worth it for him, right? If I can't get my money back, why would I lend money? So basically, this is what we call shalotin ol delit bifnei lovim. We're now standing, we just finished the Shemitah year. We're all supposed to sign Prusbal documents. Hope you did. In any case, that's to allow you to collect your loans despite the fact that the Shemitah comes and cancels them. Because if we didn't do that, no one would ever want to lend money out because they would know every time the Shemitah year would come, nobody would pay them back. There's all sorts of things they did in order to prevent the situation that people will stop loaning money to people. It's very important. So that overrides this issue of the woman. How does that connect with the sugya on Pei Daled that we just saw about Rabbi Yochanan, who said, Bishum china, we're going to make it easier for the woman to collect? So Tosfot basically raises this question. I want to suggest, okay, I'll read you Tosfot's answer. I see, Ruth, you're writing something that Rashi says. Rashi says it would have to be that they were written on the same day. Okay, not everybody agrees with this. It happens to be an opinion of Rashi. Okay, I actually have it underlined in my Gemara, so I'm glad you reminded me. I wanted to say it. I don't always notice while I'm teaching. Rashi says in the last line of Yoter Sha'ish Rotzeh, Rashi says, Aval im kadma zman ketuba hi gova. Okay, if her ketuba day was earlier, it's only in the case that they were both on the same day. It's very hard to really say that that's the pshat here because it's not what it says. Not everybody agrees with Rashi, but it is interesting to note Rashi tries to come up with a way that the woman could still collect it by saying only if they were on the same day, but if her date was earlier, then she'd collect it. Any case, we still have this issue with the other sugya. So Tosfot raises it in Lishalo Yavina Le. Tosfot raises the question, which is a very obvious question. And he distinguishes this case is when the person's still alive, and that case is after death. So he says, when you loan money to somebody, you're not worried, oh, in the event that they die, I'm going to have to collect it from their orphans, and then the woman will get it before me. So in the event of after death, the woman has first dibs because she is obviously expecting to collect her too, but after the death of the husband. She's already imagining, right? The 50%, right? There's either he's going to divorce her or he's going to die. And she probably assumes that she's getting married, he'll probably die rather than divorce me. They're about to get married. They're not really thinking of divorce. Not that she's thinking of her husband's death either, but you do think forward of when I'll get my ketuba money. That's something she's thinking about. And therefore we're going to make it easier for her to collect after death. But when you loan money to somebody, you're not thinking, what if they die and I have to collect it from their orphans? No, that's not really what's on your mind. You're just thinking of getting your money back. So this is a regular situation. You're worried, what if they don't have money to pay me back? And what if they have to pay something else at the same time? So that's why we're going to give strength. In this case, it's an interesting answer. I wouldn't say it resolves the issue entirely. Another possibility is there was a machloket, and that was Rabbi Yochanan, and this Gemara thinks otherwise. And it's interesting to see different approaches. Do they think women are always just willing to get married and don't really care about their financial situation? They're just happy to be getting married because they feel like that already protects them. They're not worried going forward. Or maybe other people say, no. Women are very concerned with their financial stability going forward, and they are worried even at the time of marriage. What if the marriage ends and how am I going to get my ketuba money? And maybe it would prevent them. So it could be that there's different approaches as to, and that was Rabbi Yochanan, and this is, remember there, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chanina disagree with Rabbi Yochanan maybe because he didn't hold this issue of china. So anyway, it's not just there that Rabbi Yochanan says it. China comes up a whole bunch of times. And we do see that they try to make it easier for the woman to collect her ketuba in all sorts of situations, but maybe not when it's in conflict with something that's even more important, okay? Which again, that's sugya with the same two people, so it's harder to say. But again, it could be different approaches. Okay, we'll leave that question aside now and move forward. Amar le Rav Papa le Rav Chama. Vadai. Okay, Rav Papa goes to Rav Chama right now and says, I heard you say something in the name of Rava. Is it really true? So Vadai da Amaritu, is it really true what you said? Mishmei de Rava, in the name of Rava. Hai man de maske bezuze v'ilea. Someone's owed money, and the love has land. V'ata bal, right, the borrower has land. V'ata bal chov katava mine. And the creditor comes and says, give me back my money. V'amar le zil shkol me'ar. Let's say it's me and you. I loaned you money. You come and you say, okay, take my land. Amrina le, can I say to him, in other words, I heard you say this in the name of Rava, that I can go say to you, to her, let's say, zil zabin at va'aite havli. You go sell the land and give me the money. I loan you money. I want money back. Don't give me land. If you give me land, I'll have to go sell the land. We all know it's not so easy to sell property. It depends on the market, but no matter what, it's a headache. So the headache's on you. You sell the property and give me the money. Is it true that you can force him to do that? Amarle, lo, said, I never said that. So Emali Gufa de Uvda Hechahavi. So Rav Papa says, but there was a case where you did that. So tell me the details of the case and let me understand. This is always a good lesson. And be careful when you learn from a situation that happened. It might have unique circumstances that basically make that that the judgment was in a particular manner because of that particular case, and you can't necessarily learn from it to all other cases. So Rav Papa had heard about some case. He hadn't heard the details, and he just heard that Rav Chama said, Rava said that he can force the person to sell the property, the borrower, in order to pay back the money. So what was the case? Oh, it was a case where, let's say you were the borrower. You didn't want to pay me back. So what'd you do? You sold your land to a non-Jew. And by selling your land to a non-Jew, what happens now? Normally, if you sell your land to a Jew, I can go collect it. It's nechasim mishuabadin. It's lien property. But when you sell it to a non-Jew, and this is a good question, I didn't really figure this out exactly. Either I'm just scared to go collect it from him. In other words, it's true, it was lien, but go try telling this non-Jew. Remember, their relations with non-Jews, at least according to some sugyot, were a little bit dangerous, and you don't want to get them too upset. They might do something back at you. So therefore, he was scared to go to him and claim back his land. And therefore, what did he say? Therefore, he said, okay, so the Gemara says here, he sold the property of the Gentile just to, right, or he gave it to him just to basically not have assets so that he wouldn't have to pay back the loan. So that was inappropriate. So and therefore they treated him, they went against the law and basically required him to do something that normally you're not required to do by law, which is they forced him to get the land back, sell the land, or get the money for it and give it to by the way, I don't think he sold it to the Gentile. I think he just gave it to him and said, say this is in your name, and that way I won't have any land to my name and they won't be able to collect this loan back. So therefore they forced him to go back and sell it. Another reason I was thinking, the Gentile might just not care about nichasim mishuabadin. That's like in our Jewish system of law. But he could say, oh, I don't, your liens don't mean anything to me, and try to prove it in a court of non-Jewish law, and maybe it was something you couldn't really prove. Like maybe they didn't have those same rules. I don't know. That's why it could be just he was scared of him, and really it could have been in a court of law, could have been ruled, but he didn't really want to start up. Okay. So basically, you learn from this a bunch of things, right? Don't hear partially about the bottom line of a situation without understanding the details, because you can really get confused about what the law is. At least Rav Papa was smart enough to ask him when he heard something that sounded so not believable, because in general, we've learned you can pay back with land. So there'd be no reason that you'd have to force the borrower to sell the land. That's why he said, incredulous, did you really say this? Amalei Rav Kahana, the Rav Papa. Another incredulous thing in today's stuff. A lot of things today are very surprising, right? Number one, surprising that you could forego on this loan. That's number one, after you sold the promissory note to someone. Number two, that, here this situation, he thought, what? You could force the borrower to sell his property? Number three, I found this surprising. According to you, Rav Papa, you hold that paying back a loan is a mitzvah. Now, when we say mitzvah means a good thing to do kind of thing. It means that it's not a chova. There's reshut, which is optional. It's not optional. There's mitzvah, which is it's important thing to do. And then there's chova, which is obligatory. So you say it's not obligatory, really. You say it's a mitzvah. So if so, amar lo nicha diavid mitzvah. What if someone says, I don't want to pay back that loan? Lo bali, as we say in Hebrew. I'm just not interested. Can we enforce this or not? Right? Normally, you can enforce something that's an obligation. Amarle, Tanina, he says, well, I'm going to prove it from here. There's halacha. Torah says when you get lashes, which is usually because you did some negative commandment, and they give you lashes, arba'im yakenu lo yosif, you get 40, which really they explain is 39. You can't add any more. You can't do more than that. So, in what case is it that you can't do more than 40 b'mitzvat lo tasit if it was because of a negative commandment? Aval b'mitzvat aseh, very surprising line. You ready for this? If it's a positive commandment, kigon she'omrim lo aseh sukkah. Okay, I told you we're going to have two relevant things today, not just regret about the past and Yom Kippur, but also sukkah. If they say build a sukkah and you don't do it, ve'eno oseh, or lulav, pick up the lulav, make the bracha, ve'eno oseh, and you don't do it, makin oto ad shetetze nafsho. Very harsh line. They can give you lashes until, nafsho sounds like until you die. So nobody really thinks it's until you die. We don't kill you to do this. But the point is that you're not limited in the 40. You can keep going until the person says, okay, I'll build my sukkah, I'll take my lulav. Okay, so if you have anyone here who doesn't take a lulav, beware that nobody comes knocking on your door and forcing you to do this. Okay, anyway, as a woman, you can claim exemption, although I do encourage it despite that. In any case, what's besides surprising, which we can just assume is an exaggeration, what it means is there's no limit, okay? But usually we're much more strict with somebody transgressing a negative commandment than somebody not fulfilling a positive commandment. And this source seems to say the opposite of what we in general see. Whoever said there were lashes for not doing a positive mitzvah, right? So it's a very surprising statement. So in any case, the point is that if you see someone who's about to not do something, sounds like you can give them lashes, which means on that power, we can give lashes to someone who hasn't returned a loan. Now, it seems to me, even though you can do this, I don't think the court generally does this, although in the case of a loan, you could see they would do this. In other words, not building a sukkah, not taking a lulav. I don't see the courts going around knocking on people's doors, making sure that they do those things, and if not, give them lashes. But when there's someone else at stake here and they're not giving back their loan, then I could see them fulfilling that. So the fact that this source says you can do it doesn't necessarily mean they did do it. I think that's the way it makes more sense to me, but it's definitely an interesting source and surprising. Now we're getting back to a different topic that we've seen already, which is we now have, okay, I see you're asking Adina about a get. Before I move on, it's interesting because our next topic is get. That's why it came up. But a get is different because there's no mitzvah to give a get. It's not like there's a mitzvah associated with giving a get. It's not a positive commandment. So it's different. Even though they do, we saw already that by law, you really can beat people up, although there's limitations on when and how and all that. And again, despite the fact that legally you can, generally they don't do it. They don't think that it's a good method of getting someone to do something, or they don't want to use it. Okay. We're now going back to, we had this argument, Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva, about if you grab something, is it valid, is it not, right? Does it always go to the, right? Rabbi Akiva said there's no rachamim in the deen. We don't have any mercy in judgment. It goes to the inheritors, the heirs, even if you grabbed it. But Rabbi Tarfon said if you grabbed it, it's yours. Now, grabbed it where? We said in the public domain. So now on that topic, we're going to get off on a totally different question, which is, Rami Bar Chama asked Rav Chista, if somebody says, this is your get, I only want you to use it for divorce. And this document, I'm giving it to you today, the whole importance of giving over the get to the woman, but it's only going to go into effect in 30 days. So she accepted the get. She puts it on the side of Reshut HaRabim. Okay, if you've ever gone to the Cardo in the old city, so there's like a strip where all the stores are, and then there's the space on the side, which isn't a thoroughfare where everybody's walking through, but it's a little space on the side where some people would do some individual business, kind of in between public domain and private domain. So that's going to be the big question. It's now in this area, which is questionable exactly how we view it. So is that considered, in other words, if it's in the public domain on day number 30, when it's supposed to go into effect, it's in the public domain, it's not in her domain. But if it's in this side area, then maybe that would be considered, again, is it public? And then it wouldn't be a valid get. There seems to be this assumption that on day 30, it has to be in her domain when it goes into effect. So Amarle, there's a bit of a debate about exactly what he said and what the wording was. I'm not going to get into all the details here, but know that there's more to it than what meets the eye. Amarle, Eina Megureshet. She's not divorced. How so? Mi de Rav Shmuel de Amrei Travayu. She's not divorced because it's like Rav and Shmuel. They said it has to be in Reshut HaRabim, right? This is the opposite. In order to be able to be tofes, it had to be in a public domain. And they assume that the tzidei Reshut HaRabim are just like Reshut HaRabim. So since Rav and Shmuel talk about it in, right, it's the opposite context. There we needed it to be in a public domain in order to grab it because it was in no man's land. So this was also in no man's land, which means she's not divorced. To which the Gemara says, you could say Meguresha mid Rav Nachman. Based on what Rav Nachman, you could say she is divorced. Why? Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravua. This also we saw just before. Haomer lechavero mishoch parazo below tiek nuyalcha alachar shloshim yom. Pull this para, which is an act of acquisition, but it's not going to be yours for another 30 days. This is very, very similar. Lachar shloshim yom kana. Okay, so sorry, kana. Period. He acquired this cow. Bafilu omed ba'agam. Even if the cow is standing in this swamp. So my lav hainu agam hainu tzidei rishut harabim. They say, isn't the agam just like rishut harabim, which would mean it was not public enough that it could be considered in his domain. Likewise, the tzidei rishut harabim are not public enough that we could consider the get is in her domain. To which the Gemara rejects that suggestion and says, lo, agam l'chu v'tzidei rishut harabim l'chu. No, those are two totally different things. Agam is more private. A swamp is a more private space than the sides of rishut harabim. Again, because it's right next to the public domain and people from the public domain kind of go into there, that already makes it more like a public domain. That's the first version of the sugya, which basically says in this case, she's not going to be divorced. Ika de Amre, but some people say it was the exact reverse. Okay, we started there with Rav and Shmuel. We tried to reject it based on Rav Nachman, and then we reinstated Rav and Shmuel. So now we're going to do the exact reverse. Ika de Amre, Amrle Megureshet, Mida Rav Nachman, but Tzidei Rishut harabim ke'agam dami. They first suggested that she's divorced like Rav Nachman, and without quoting the whole case again, but they're going to say, just like in the agam, in the swamp, it was his, also the Tzidei Rishut harabim will consider it hers. To which the Gemara rejects and says, Adrabah, no, you could say the reverse. Eina Megureshet Mida Rav and Shmuel. Based on what Rav and Shmuel said, it's more like Rishut harabim. My love, hainu Rishut harabim, hainu tzidei Rishut harabim. Isn't the sides of Rishut harabim like, wouldn't they have the same rules as Rishut harabim, the public domain? To which the Gemara then rejects, lo, Rishut harabim l'chu, tzidei Rishut harabim l'chu. No, the sides of Rishut harabim are not like the Rishut harabim itself, and therefore it would be more like the Agam case, and therefore she is divorced. So we have the exact opposite sugya, two different versions of what this was about. Now we move on to our next topic. We're still dealing with husband and wife, and right, we started with this issue of if he writes to her, Dinu dvarim ein lebinachasayik, right? I don't want to have anything to do with your property, etc., or your payroll or this. Now we're going to talk about a man who puts his wife in charge of his money while they're alive. He basically put her in charge of the store, let's say, okay, for typical in those days, possibly, or at least what the rabbis are discussing, or the guy wanted to learn, so he put his wife in charge of the store. Or he was good with money stuff, he put her in charge of handling his money. Fascinating thing. He can make her swear anytime he wants. He can basically say, look, right, I put you in charge, but I don't fully trust you. Okay, hard to imagine. And he basically is going to make her take an oath from time to time, whenever he wants, that she's handling things properly, that she didn't take some for herself, give some to her family members. Okay, he can make her swear. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, afilu al pilcha va'alisata, even about the wool that she spins, and even about the dough that she makes, a husband can make his wife take a shevu'a. Now, these go back to that Mishna of all the jobs the woman's supposed to do in the house, spinning the wool, baking the bread, right? So he can make her take an oath anytime he wants, according to Rabbi Eliezer, about those things. To which the Gemara asks right away, Rabbi Eliezer, al yedei gilgul kamar or lechatchila kamar? What is gilgul? Gilgul is when, in general, the rabbis did not like people taking oaths. Okay, even though oaths were clearly very popular, we have an entire masechet just on nidarim, vows. That's our next one, and we have an entire masechet, which is going to be much later, on shvuot, on swears, oaths. So this clearly was much more prevalent than it is nowadays. That's what we do at Tarat Nidarim and Kol Nidre this time of year, because people at one point took a lot of vows. So, but despite that, they were very hesitant to take oaths. Oaths use the name of God, and you don't like to take an oath for no reason. So there's a concept called gilgul shevu'a, which is if you have to take an oath for something by law, so then we have no choice. We can also, once you're already using God's name and swear and making this oath, we can add on all sorts of things that we maybe want to check also. Okay, on their own, they wouldn't be able to require you to take an oath. But since you're already doing it, gilgul is at legalgel, to roll it in. We'll just roll in a bunch of other things. So when he says, Rabbi Eliezer, that even on the wool that she spins or on her dough, does he mean if she's working in your store and you anyway are giving her an oath about that, so you can add on that? Or does he mean, no, she's not working for you at all. You're just worried that maybe she's taking some of the wool and giving it to her family members or something, and you want her to swear. So that's a big question. Amru lo Rabbi Eliezer. And this is very interesting that they say this, and it's going to be a mantra that we've seen many times, a line that we've seen a lot. Ein adam dar im nachash b'kfifa. Right? You wouldn't put a person into small quarters with a snake. And therefore, how could you possibly enable a husband to make his wife take oaths on basic items, the dough she makes, the wool she spins? This is like, okay, first of all, we've seen this term already a few times, and which is very interesting in and of itself, right? We're in this masechet of all these contractual requirements of husband and wives, and it seems very, very legalistic. And yet come these lines and they make you realize that no, they're talking about real life people, and they're talking about real life relationships. And that is a very unhealthy relationship if a husband is going to make his wife swear all the time about the wool she spins and the dough that she's making for him. So that's a crazy way to have them stay married. So you can't force a woman to be in a relationship like that. That's just not healthy. And it reminds us of the lo hinachta bat l'Avram Avinu sheyoshevet tachat ba'ala, right? There'd be no woman under Avram Avinu, right? And the whole family of Abraham, all the Jewish people, who would ever stay married to her husband in those circumstances. That was with the covering the hair, right? So anyway, these lines really are indicative of, they understand there's a relationship here, and we're not just talking about legal rights. So now what does this prove? Well, if you say lechatchila shapir, you say he can just make her swear anytime, then it makes sense, because that's exactly what the rabbis are saying. You can't possibly make her swear all the time. But gilgul, where she's obligated an oath anyway, like she's working in a store, that already the rabbis don't think is so difficult. Well, then why would he say that? Right? So they say, right, that wouldn't be, if she anyway has to take a shevu'a about the store, so he can add that. That wouldn't be torturous for the woman to stay in a relationship like that. To which the Gemara says very interestingly, no, you can't prove that. Why? Even that is torturous. If I'm working in my husband's store and he makes me take an oath for that I can get. But if he's going to add on while I'm anyway making that oath and say, well, swear also about the wool and swear also about the dough, she could say, to him, you're being super crazy with me. You're making me swear to you about every little thing. I can't live with it. Okay, so even if you're already taking an oath, it's not the taking of an oath that's so bad. It's that he's not trusting you about anything, even little things in the house. I understand in the store, okay, I'm handling a lot of money. It's the business, okay, but don't go so far as to start bothering me about the basic household duties that I'm doing. So that doesn't prove what Rabbi Eliezer thinks. Tashma, let's try from this source. That's going to be the next Mishna, where a husband exempts his wife from ever having to swear. They make an agreement before the wedding. I won't ever make you take an oath or a vow. Let's say he didn't do that, is how this Breita starts off. And therefore, and he put her in the store or to be in charge of his money. He can make her take an oath anytime he wants. But if not, he can't. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, now notice what he says here. Even though even if she wasn't in charge of the store, she wasn't the administrator of his funds, he can make her take an oath anytime he wants. So clearly, it's not just gilgul shevu'a, it's even lechatchila. He basically said, a woman, her basic jobs are using his stuff, right, and producing things from it. So the nature of her relationship and the whole nature of it is she's using his funds basically and managing them, even just in a small way, by making food for him. This reminds us of the Mishna, of the woman who feeds him food that she didn't take the tithes of and all that. So, Amru lo, they said to him, okay, if you're asking what happened to trust, so this is exactly what the rabbis said. It's crazy what you're acquiring. That shows no trust, no anything. A woman can't live with a husband who doesn't trust her and is going to be constantly questioning her every move. So therefore, shma mina lechatchila shma mina. Okay, it must be now. Rabbi Eliezer, remember, we don't hold like Rabbi Eliezer. He has a unique approach, which is the husband can demand this. But the rabbis are very against this and only allow it in unique circumstances where she's actually managing his money. Next Mishna, and this is very similar to the structure of the first Mishna in the chapter where we're going to have one case and then build on it and build on it and build on it. Hatavla, if he wrote to her, they made an agreement before the marriage, I promise you that I will not make you take a vow or an oath throughout your, from me to you. So notice he's saying, I will not force you. Okay, he can't ever make her take an oath because he promised her. But notice he didn't include her heirs or someone who has power of attorney for her. Someone comes in her place, he can make them take an oath. If he says, case number 2, but if he includes the heirs and anyone else who's power, has power of attorney for her, because then he already specified that. But once he dies, and other people, he only said me. He didn't say, and my heirs. So therefore, later, once he's dead, they can actually insist that she take an oath or a vow. If he says, neder shwa ein li, v'lo li yorshai, v'lo la ba'im b'rshuti, not me, not anyone who comes in place of me, not my heirs. And right, and then he says, alayich val yorshech val ba'im b'rshutech. This is the complete statement. Then then he and all the people who come after him, and she and all the people who come after her, no one can make anybody take an oath. Last case for today. If she goes straight from the grave, let's say he said, I will not make you take a shevu'a. And then she goes from there, the first case, okay, where he didn't include the heirs. And then she goes straight from there to her father's house, meaning she has nothing to do anymore with his property. She goes back to her father-in-law's house, but she wasn't in charge of the funds at all. They can't make her swear at all because there's nothing for her to swear about. She never handled the money. But they can't go back to things from the lifetime because he had promised. No. But if after his death she became an apitropia, then they can make her take a shevu'a on what's coming because he didn't include them in the statement, because we're going back to the first case, but not retroactively. They can't go back and make her swear on things that happened during the husband's lifetime. They can't say, go back to 2020 and what did with the year you were handling the store then, did you blah, blah, blah. They can't make her do that. They can make her swear moving forward, but not going back. Okay, we'll get more into detail in this Mishna in tomorrow's daf. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom, Mazal Tov on the 1000th daf. If you've been learning from the beginning, even if you've skipped a few or didn't in the beginning, wherever you're up to, Mazal Tov and your accomplishments. You should be proud. You can go see our Facebook post, add some comments to get traction going, and wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom.